Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am fucking Wile E. Coyote up in this bitch. Joining me today is...
Bugstock. Yeah.
And I'm Steve.
That's very offensive. I can't believe you would make fun of the disabled in such a way, Steve. I don't even know you anymore.
You know what? If the disabled didn't want to be made fun of, then they would be abled.
Oh, oof. Ouch. Okay. Maybe I should restart this episode. I don't know. So anyway, yes, so today we're here to do a review topic that Alfie picked. Alfie, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the film American Hustle.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Alright, so this is always my question when I don't have any real input as of yet. What made you want to pick this one?
Well, my good friend Ian asked me to pick something that I didn't know anything about going in, and something I just hadn't had any preconceived notions about whatsoever. So just looked on the list of like movies I've been meaning to get to that was recommended by my wife, my friend like Steve and such. So American Hustle was on the list. We gave it a watch, had a good time, figured it'd be a good thing to watch.
Alrighty. Steve, now when I told you that this was what we were going to be talking, you said, I'm going to kill Alfie for making me have to rewatch that movie, so I'm going to assume you don't particularly care for this film.
No, I don't like this movie. I think it's a bad movie. It's a bad movie.
Not even like, I just don't like it. You think it's actively bad, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not like offensively bad or anything. I just don't think it's a particularly good movie. I'm not a David O. Russell fan. It doesn't have, because, you know, I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with it, like, him as a person, and we could get into some of that stuff, too, just for, like, educational viewing, but his style is something that's never really, like, jived with me. I feel like he's always kind of been caught in this space where he wanted to make a Scorsese movie, and he's just not as good as Scorsese, so it always just kind of peters out. Like, The Fighter is just a bad version of Raging Bull. American Hustle is just a bad version of Goodfellas. Like, it just kind of follows that pattern for him. I think Silver Linings Playbook is pretty good, but I don't love that movie either. He had another movie come out last year called Amsterdam, which I didn't even bother watching until well after the year was out because I just did not care. And I didn't enjoy that one either. Amsterdam really feels a lot like this movie, except set in a different period. So I'm not a big fan of his work in general. This movie just kind of feels derivative to me in a lot of ways. I feel like that comparison probably looked even worse on him historically because it came out the same year as Scorsese's Wolf of Wall Street. Now, I don't love Wolf of Wall Street either, but like it is kind of telling when you can like watch a Scorsese movie and watch a Russell movie back to back and be like, oh, I see where he's getting all this. So I don't love this. All of the actors in it are good, but I don't think any of them are giving performances that you can't find them doing better in other movies. Like Christian Bale is good in this, but he's not like Christian Bale good in this. Amy Adams is good in this, but she's not like Amy Adams good in this. Bradley Cooper is the same way. Jeremy Renner, Jennifer Lawrence, like literally everyone in the movie, I just feel like they're turning in a performance that is characteristic of them, but nothing about it blows my mind. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. I'm sure we'll have some ins and outs to talk about it, and obviously if we want to get into any of the shit David O. Russell has done over the years, like the time he headbutted Christopher Nolan. Just give me a cue and I'll start talking about that stuff.
I mean, I'm certainly curious because I don't think I've ever even like heard this dude's name thrown around before. So that's pretty funny, and I'm definitely curious about stories such as that. And also anyone that headbutts Christopher Nolan, I mean, the balls, right? But, Steve, here's what I have to say to all your out the gate negativity of this movie. Yes, Amy Adams might turn in better performances in other films, but does she turn in as much side boob as she does here?
You know
I
what?
think not.
That's fair. That's fair. That definitely gives it at least one more star than normal. Really, it gives it 2 half stars, which is a whole star.
There you go.
Never mind. Brilliant movie.
I love the fact that I know no one fucking watches Geeky Gentlemen, but like the fact that like that moment in isolation, if someone had like just started watching the show, they're like, okay, whatever with this. I don't get their intro about who's Wile E. Coyote and whatever, but like, what is their thoughts? And it's like, okay, I fucking get I know exactly the type of guys these are. The side boob comments. This is disgusting. Like I think that's some fictional person's reaction to this show now. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle of the road on this movie. I liked it well enough. I kind of see where you're coming from, Steve. Where like everyone's kind of good in this, but no one's like blowing me away. Nothing feels like this is the like, this is such a fucking good performance kind of movie. Like Christian Bale tries his best, and I think he is the most interesting to watch in this, but he's not like he doesn't get a ton of chances to do something like, you know, scene catching. He's just kind of there a lot of the time. So that was kind of iffy for me, but overall I did like it. I thought the premise was kind of cool. I'd never heard about any of this shit going down in real life. I don't know how much of it's. They say in the beginning that like some of the events are true, and I'm like, I don't know how much of it is, or if that's just bullshit, but it's like a fucking fascinating story, and I can totally see why you'd want to make a movie out of it. I have some level of trouble believing that the FBI got scammed out of $2 million and no one went to prison over it, but we'll see. I'm sure one of the two of you fucking did more research on this thing than I did, which is to say none. So I don't know, it was an interesting little watch. I didn't regret seeing it, but yeah, I can't ever imagine watching this again myself.
I'm kind of the boat where I think I like this the most between everyone, but I also don't think it's something I'm in a mood to rewatch either. I guess I'm just most surprised by Steve disliking it as much as he did, because I thought this was a really solid film. The kind that it's harder and harder to find that we make anymore, where you get like a very big cast, and I don't know, I thought they all turned in really good performances. Like, I was very impressed by Amy Adams. The star of the show here, I think this is probably the best role I've seen her in, was Jennifer Lawrence. I think she did a fantastic job in this film compared to I never knew she had that much range. I didn't know she had that much comedic timing. And being able to play that so seamlessly and go back and forth with all of that, I thought was really, really impressive. So I don't know, I thought the performances in this were really good. I thought the basic setup for the movie was very good. And I think there's like really, really smartly written individual lines and scenes in this that give you a lot of character without getting lost in the... Everyone knows, like you kind of said, like the Scorsese kind of boom, 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 back and forth, quick editing, monologue over scenes of people organizing money and planning like cons and stuff like that. That type of film has always been kind of a staple, and the tricks of how to make that get done make it less impressive over time, but I still thought this did it very well and executed it. So I don't know if I have a lot to talk about with this film. I think that's kind of the issue of going into something I didn't know about as a recommendation. But I thought this was just a really good time, and I guess I'd be curious to know more about what specifically the failings of this are, because at the moment, I just don't really think of a Wink Link. Like, even the actors I don't normally care for, like Jeremy Renner, I don't like Jeremy Renner as an actor. The little part he had in this, I thought he did a really good job with, and I felt it was believable, and I felt he served the story really well.
I guess to kind of piggyback off of that, I will say, like, the big thing for me that really bothered me, that goes in line with that Scorsese comparison you made, is that I feel like the problem this movie runs into is that it's paced really poorly, and I think that's a function of how the movie is edited to try and simulate being like Scorsese without really understanding what makes Scorsese work. If you guys ever seen the recent version of Les Mis with Russell Crowe, one of the things that's weird about that movie that people criticized at the time was the transitions between talking and singing like don't exist at all, where people are just kind of like talking through the whole movie before the next song kicks in. And this movie does that too, except it's with montages, where it feels like every other scene is a montage, and every individual scene is set in the middle of or is preparing you for the next montage. So you never actually feel like you're living in individual moments very well. I feel like it's the kind of movie, almost like a CW show, where locations only exist so that you can transition out of those locations and go into your montage. And that really bothered me watching it, where it just felt like every time I was getting my bearings with any one thing happening, the montage would just pick up. And he would use the narrations that Scorsese would use in like Goodfellas that are retroactive to kind of push you along those montages. But I never felt like any of the perspectives being provided in the narrations were actually adding anything to the movie. It just sort of felt like it was this crutch to kind of keep the pace going, because it's not a super long movie, but it's a long enough kind of movie where you sort of need some kind of like upbeat music and fast setting to kind of hurry the story along. But I thought it did that to such a degree where I was having a hard time sort of understanding where specific characters were coming from, because everything was just getting pushed into the next scene all the time. Every scene was just a needle drop and then push you into the next scene, needle drop, push you into the next scene, needle drop, push you into the next scene. So that really bothered me. That really took me out of it. And I feel like it really needed to like sit somewhere. It really felt like it needed to stop somewhere to let you just kind of get your bearings with where all the characters were. And anytime it did that, it then just immediately jumped into the next scene. The big party scene where Jennifer Lawrence comes in and she has that big blowout about meeting Amy Adams is, I think, maybe the best example of where it's not doing that. And that's a very good, like, that's a very big scene, but there's a lot of good stuff happening there. And I wish more of the movie was that. I wish more of the movie was have the characters in a location and like actually live with the drama in that location instead of just trying to move us along to the next big quick bit.
I guess I can see that specifically about the pacing, as I do think this runs on a little long. I think you could tighten this up. And part of that, I'm curious as always when you like make films like this, how much of a screenplay is dictating that, how much is an editor, and how much is it like letting, because a lot of this is improvised in like the performances, and I think that leads to some really good results. But I think the problem with improvised scenes is you then have to accommodate for how long they run on. Improv does tend to trail on. You very rarely get very short, snappy improv scenes. They do tend to extend things out because you still want to be able to cover the stuff that's already in the script they need to get to. So I'm curious from like a behind-the-scenes thing how that works. But I will concede on that. I do think this is something where it goes on longer than it needs to, but by the time you get to the ending and how things pay off, you probably would have had a better sense of catharsis with bringing that all together. But I don't think I was ever lost with this film. I think this carried me through a lot of different information pretty seamlessly. And I think everyone's places and everyone's arcs in this film were pretty clear from like a standpoint, and like not in a way where it's just like, oh, it checks these boxes, but I think in like a compelling way where I think like it actually showed me something different and let the characters be embodied by the actors and let me show this like a little glimpse into this time period and as a piece of history with a lot of style and a lot of pizzazz. Like I think Christian Bale as like the anchor behind this entire film, I think does a fantastic job. I think it's a fantastic choice, and I think it's a very interesting choice to have him play the con man who normally in these situations the example I'll give is like Wolf of Wall Street, where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is you feel sympathy for him, and there's the very like American spirit of like guy who came from nothing, wheeling and dealing his way to the top, where you are rooting for that type of character. There's just something inherent to us with that. But he's like a scumbag. He is like an awful person. Christian Bale's character in this is like, you know, he's actually a pretty solid guy, like all things said and considered. He's actually very like easy to root for by the end once you head into the third act and like everything's going wrong for him. There's many moments when I had like a specific feeling of like, Jesus fuck, this poor guy. His fucking heart's going, everything's going on. That microwave's on fire. It's like, how much shit can you pile up? I think that was very compelling to do that. I think that's really fun to put your protagonist in a hopeless situation like that, and then eventually how they resolve it, being as efficient as it. I thought that was it. You can go a lot wrong there with that, but I think the performances and the script of this really made that like feel like compelling and energizing, and giving that sense of dread of like, oh fuck, this can't get worse. Oh fuck, it got worse. Like, how much bad is this gonna get? I think that was very, very good.
I really liked the fucking science oven scene. The science of it scene kind of carries the fucking movie, and like legit, I might just call it that for the rest of my fucking life. It's so good. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, again, I think I'm in the middle ground with this one, because like I definitely see what you're saying, Steve. With like sometimes the narration just seem to be there to like kind of, it almost seemed like obligatory. And the thing that really got me is because it's such a weird thing to do, right? Where you only have one narrator in a film. Like, there's obvious exceptions, but by and large. But this film opens with one narrator, and then very shortly afterward gives us a second, and she only gets like 2 or 3 times where she narrates. That's a weird choice, and they're basically right at the beginning of the movie. So I didn't like that. But then, yeah, Alfie, what you were talking about with just the way that things kept piling on for him. Yeah, I did actually really enjoy that. That was really like, you know, compelling and interesting to watch, in the way that they just kind of subtly introduced it, where he just has to literally like stop and take some fucking nitroglycerin for his goddamn heart. Was fucking terrifying, and like legitimately like it just felt very, very human. You know, you watch a lot of movies or shows or whatever where there's like something very suspenseful going on, or something like horrifying just happened, and like the characters just gotta shrug it off and move on to the next thing. And to just take someone and have them like literally just have a fucking panic attack in the middle of a scene is something I don't think we do very often. And like, he's still moving and he's not like dwelling on it, but he just needs that moment to have a literal fucking panic attack in the middle of the scene. So that was pretty good.
The emotion it gets for me is, I think it's very easy, and kind of it becomes a trope with these type of characters where you have them, the game is the fun, the game is the life, and when they're out of the game or not doing the game, they miss it, and they can be nervous or stressful in it, but after a successful time, it feels like they want the next one, they want the next bigger thing. Very rarely, this entire film is just like, all right, we did it, let's stop, please, for the love of God, let's stop going deeper, I'm begging you, please. That by the end of this film, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, where he's just like, yeah, I just want to retire, have Amy Adams and a child, and open an art gallery. I'm like, yeah, I believe this guy is never going to turn to crime ever again. He had the worst experience of his fucking life. Like, it's really it's refreshing for me to see that, and I think a lot of the character tropes in this, Amy Adams playing like the femme fatale type character, who I think in a lot of other movies would have been served with less maturity. In this, the fact that she gets to be flawed and can be sexy when she wants to be, but I don't know, there's a procuring sense of like realism around this, and specifically realism from people who come from like poverty and like poor neighborhoods and trying to find a way out. The whole film with the Carmine Mayer character, people like, let's get jobs back and let's things, and like this sense of like renewal and the paths you have to go through for renewal, and effectively the main villain being a fucking cop. I think all of that was like really, really good, and gave you a sense of, if you've ever been in those environments or had family members with those ties or had those sense of stress-induced feelings of like not knowing of a way out because you just dug yourself in too deep, but it was the only option you had. I don't know. It strikes a chord for me. It makes it something very down to earth and unglamorized but truthful. And I always appreciate that in films when you can get that sense of truth to me, when you can make those characters sing and speak and have a variety of emotions and not someone's just in those specific roles. Like I think Amy Adams and Christian Bale, like their chemistry in this, their relationship in this, I think was fantastic. Like I think it felt very believable that these two kind of hate each other but love each other, and the arc they go through this film, the ups and downs they have, that by the end of it, and they're like, all right, let's just get ourselves out of this fucking mess. I fully believe that they would get back together with that, and I think in a lesser writer's hands, you would have made that feel like unbelievable of like all the shit they've gone through, that they would ever get back together by the end of it. But I don't know if that was just me.
I don't know, Steve. You were gonna say something while I was in the middle of talking, so why don't you go ahead?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, when you mentioned the narration thing on your side, part of that is also, again, the Goodfellas thing of like the one guy narrates the movie all the way through, but then the other person starts narrating, and the twist is that she is also informing on the FBI, and or so like the movie gives you a reason why the perspective suddenly shifts, and at the same time it sort of creates this interesting emotional journey for the two main characters who you don't feel like are always on the same page, and then suddenly the big sort of cathartic moment is, oh, but they're on the same page about this, and that's why they're both relaying the story, because it's both of their stories. And I don't think this movie really has that. I feel like they're just kind of swapping narrators whenever it's kind of convenient for the story. The other thing, I get where you're coming from with this. The trouble I have with it is it sort of just feels like when you've seen other movies do this better, it's hard to watch this and not sort of just implicitly compare it to the better movies that have done it before. Like it's really not like a horribly executed premise or anything. It's just one of those things where I have a hard time feeling like anything that's happening in it particularly stands out. I don't love the chemistry between Amy Adams and Christian Bale, which is weird because I really like it between Christian Bale and Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence is half Christian Bale's age, but like when you get those scenes together where they're like arguing in the house or talking about the kid, or like, yeah, like when the microwave catches on fire, and then she has that whole thing about like reading articles about like the microwave sucking the nutrients out of their food and everything, and the way that she is both domineering over him and manipulating him, but at the same time is framed in a way as like there is no reason why this woman should have as much power over this man as she does, but he just can't get away from it. I thought all of that stuff was really good between those two. But I feel like when Christian Bale and Amy Adams are in scenes together, they just kind of come across as kind of wooden with each other. Amy Adams and Bradley Cooper, on the other hand, I feel like do have some chemistry going, but I think a lot of that's also just because Bradley Cooper is an extremely charismatic actor. And I feel like this movie kind of underserves Amy Adams. And there is also a history behind that, too, about like how Christian Bale almost came to blows with David O. Russell over how he was treating Amy Adams on set. It was a very similar like Kubrick, Shelley Duvall situation where like he was just berating and abusive to her. And that's her performance is a result of that kind of set behavior. And Christian Bale got to the point where like he literally almost got into a fist fight with the dude over it. So I don't know. I feel like this movie works best if you feel like the trinity of characters, Bradley Cooper, Amy Adams, and Christian Bale, are in it together, and you're convinced by their chemistry with each other. And I just kind of wasn't. I feel like there are sort of pockets where the characters interacting with each other are good, but I never feel like those kind of come together. I never really bought Christian Bale feeling like he became friends with Jeremy Renner, like at all. When he sort of has that change of heart about betraying him, I understand wanting to get out of the game, but I didn't feel what he felt for Jeremy Renner's character. And I didn't really like buy the whole sort of like performance where he goes to his house and he kicks him out because he betrayed him and like realizes that he was informing on the feds the whole time. all of that just kind of struck me as a little bit melodramatic, and it didn't feel like the actors were really clicking with each other as I was watching it.
I don't know. I like that scene. I thought that was a decently performed scene and everything. And I like how Renner's character is like this. You know, he's pretty much just a basic politician, right? Where like he's corrupt, but not like wholly corrupt, right? Like he's as corrupt as he needs to be to get shit done. So I thought that was kind of an interesting portrayal of a politician, because we don't normally do that. We normally either get like golden boys or fucking scumbags. There's like no in between. So I kind of dug that, and the fact that like he's trying to maintain that composure of like he's so mad and he's so angry, and his initial reaction is just get the fuck out of my house. And like as Christian Bale continues to not get the fuck out of his house, he can't help himself to start like fucking laying into the dude. So I don't know, I thought that was kind of just, that was an interesting dynamic. I'll say this, I think this movie does a lot of good stuff in the way that it is novel. Like some of the dynamics and some of these aspects of the human condition and what we're used to seeing in films like this, you don't see these types of characters do these types of things. Again, like the Christian Bale's character having a panic attack, Jeremy Renner's character like trying not to come to blows with them, the mob or the betrayed wife, you know, still working with her husband, not going too far but not actually wanting him dead, kind of thing. Like all of that I just found really interesting and you know, very unique and novel ways to portray these things. It felt like it was dancing around the trope without ever fully committing to it, and kind of like either inverting it or just putting an interesting spin on tropes that I think we're very familiar with.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ian. So, Steve, I guess you're just wrong and need to never talk about film again. No, but I see where you're coming from. I don't think you're unfounded. If I watched this film with you and we like dissected these scene by scenes, you could probably make a compelling argument. But I also don't think I don't think that's fair to talk about what's reflective of like my watching experience. Which is what the film is trying to do, and just kind of like the experience of watching it from start to finish as a whole, as a piece, and kind of there's like a vibe to this film as well. And like, yes, it's a vibe that's been done before, and maybe it was just the mood that I've been in. I've watched a lot less of these type of films than you have, Steve, so that vibe just hit a little extra this time for me. Maybe that's the intended audience for it, is it just gave me what I was looking for in this type of story. But and the behind the scenes stuff is interesting, and I don't know much about this, so if you want to like give us some more feedback on that, Steve, I'd actually be really interested. Like the whole story with this director is a history of abuse, right, with this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can talk about some of the stuff that happens in this movie for sure, like with Amy Adams and Christian Bale and him and everything. But I do want to go back and talk about him headbutting and headlocking Christopher Nolan.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So
I am fascinated.
Less
all
long.
right. So David O. Russell's got this movie called I Heart the Huckabees, which is like this weird sort of existential movie that came out in like 2004, and Jude Law's in it. Prior to that movie going into production, Jude Law actually dropped out of it because Christopher Nolan wanted to work with him. And so at a party a year or so before that movie came out, Christopher Nolan gets cornered by David O. Russell, and David O. Russell like berates him for like breaking some kind of like artistic integrity by working with an actor that O. Russell already wanted to work with, and so he headbutts him and puts him into a headlock over it. And by the end of it, Nolan's just like, yeah, fine, fuck it, take Jude Law, and then he did, and they made I Heart the Huckabees, and no one remembers that movie. But then meanwhile, Nolan decided to go do Insomnia and Batman Begins instead.
Damn.
So that was pretty funny. That's a fun story. there's incidents that are like this all over the place with his story. He got into a fight on set with George Clooney in the 90s. Christian Bale famously said that he would never work with him again. There are other actors that have been in things with him, like one-off movie experiences where they were just like, yeah, I'm never making a movie with this guy ever again. And that's kind of the sort of consistent trait, with the exception of like Jennifer Lawrence. He doesn't really have consistent actors he works with. The big thing that he's
anti-Nolan. Christopher Nolan, I'm going to put the same 5 actors in every one of my films. David O. Russell, I am going to alienate everyone.
I'm going to alienate 5 actors per film. The big thing for him that everyone, like, rightly so, have gotten on his back about is it was revealed a few years ago that he has a trans daughter, and he assaulted and molested his daughter, and his daughter talked about like how he would like touch her breasts, and the weird crazy thing about that story is normally you would like hear that kind of stuff happen and the person accused of it would be like, that never happened, they're misremembering, etc., etc., etc. But O. Russell, no, O. Russell doesn't do that. O. Russell's like, but I was curious. Isn't it okay because I was curious? I just wanted to know what they felt like. Like, that was literally his defense when it came to light.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I mean, I guess that makes sense as to why Louis C.K. ends up in this movie, huh?
Yeah, you know, that's part of it that hasn't aged well.
I thought that was pretty distracting, just watching like, this was when his career was at its height before he like came out and admitted to all the shit, and like, I don't know. I don't know if I have complicated feelings on Louis C.K., but I certainly don't want to see him in any more movies, I'll tell you that much.
I definitely had complicated feelings about the scene where watching Bradley Cooper beat him up with a phone was like, yes, this is great. But then also like, shit, the movie makes me want to feel bad for him too. I'm so conflicted. On the one hand, yes, leave him whimpering. On the other hand, damn it, he's kind of right.
You know what I want to know? What the fuck was the end of the ice fishing story, goddammit? Like, that feels... Chekhov's ice fishing story was not paid off, and I'm kind of mad. Not that I necessarily wanted more Louis C.K., but, like, that's just too good, like, a bit to set up. Like ignoring the actors, right? Just the, like, having the characters talk about it, like, 3 fucking times, and then you never get to the end of the goddamn story. That feels like we were, like, just poor writing. Like, I'll agree with you a little bit, Steve. I don't like some of this stuff. That's bad writing. You don't do that to an audience, right? Like, that's just inherently not good writing.
That's funny, because that's actually one of the bits I liked in the movie, because I felt like the joke with that was he already understood the story, that Bradley Cooper predicted the end of the story, but Louis C.K. just felt uncomfortable that he did, so he pretended like there was more to it, and there just wasn't. So, like, every time it comes up, it's just like, I don't want to be outgunned by this guy, so I'm going to pretend like he didn't guess the ending just to annoy him, even though he clearly got it.
Okay, maybe that's it. I don't know. I felt like legitimately like there was a completely new ending, that it was like very unique, and I was kind of like vibing for it. I was kind of ready for it, man. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of funny. I mean, maybe fucking Louis C.K. and Russell will get together and just make a really fucking shitty movie where they're just awful to everyone on set. Who knows? Maybe that'll be their future together. That's fucking crazy. I did not know. It's so weird to me that I just know nothing about this man as a director. That is so fucking funny that it's like this horrible, like, Hollywood abuser kind of behind the camera, but he gets to do all this stuff because his movies garner so much fame and attention. And fucking me over here. Who?
The Fighter and Silver Linings Playbook were kind of
the
like...
The Fighter had Christian Bale in it, though, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was before this, though. So The Fighter and Silver Linings Playbook were like his big 1-2 punch. The Fighter was really critically acclaimed, and then Silver Linings Playbook was really critically acclaimed. I imagine part of the reason Jennifer Lawrence is one of his only like recurring actors is because basically all of her Oscar noms or awards accolades come from movies that she's done with him. So like she got like 2 Oscar nominations for Best Actress, like pretty much back to back, and one of them was for Silver Linings Playbook, I think. So those were like his big 1-2 punch. That was like when he was on top of the fucking world, and he kind of used that clout to eventually go into American Hustle, and so like that sort of was his big period. And then he sort of fell off the face of the earth. He had like some movies that didn't end up coming out. He did a biopic with Jennifer Lawrence about like the lady that sells stuff on TV called Joy. That was not very good. That no one saw. And then he hadn't done a movie again since Amsterdam came out last year. And Christian Bale is in that one, so I guess he must have mended fences with this dude or something. But that movie came out last year, and no one saw it, and it had a reasonably sized budget and didn't make it back. So I think at this point he's probably not like the big Hollywood guns he used to be. But there was definitely like this little era from like 2010 to 2015 where like David O. Russell was one of the biggest directors working.
Interesting. I don't know. I like you named a couple of the movies, and I've heard of Silver Linings Playbook. I've heard of The Fighter. I don't think I've heard of Amsterdam, but it is just I've never fucking heard this dude's name mentioned one goddamn time before. That's so funny. Like I'm not the best at knowing like Hollywood directors and stuff, but I feel like I know some of the more famous ones, and I guess he's just never really climbed that list for me. Interesting.
He did also have like a whole career before those movies, but I've never seen any of them. Like George Clooney was in a movie with him in the 90s, and George Clooney got into it with him on set, and they got into a fight, and then they said that they would never work together again. And Clooney, I think, has been true to his word. I don't think he's ever been in another movie with David O. Russell since then. But I don't know any of those older movies. I kind of just know his big ones.
Fair enough. Okay, so Steve, I'm going to assume you did more research than either of us. How much of the true-to-life stuff is actually true in this movie?
Almost nothing.
Okay.
Almost nothing. Not a knock on the film in that way, because I think the movie takes a lot of liberties to make it more interesting than it actually was. Because as far as I could tell, just reading the Wikipedia page for the actual FBI operation, it was just paint by the numbers, use a former con man to help entrap U.S. politicians who are accused of taking bribes. And they did that, and they took bribes, and they went away. And the end. And nothing more complicated of it came at all. And apparently there's a lot of stuff like... So this movie was originally written as just a straight biopic adaptation of that story. And then the original writer sold the script, and David O. Russell got it, and O. Russell actually rewrote it so that he could change all the names and make everyone into a caricature of who they were in real life. And so after he made that move, none of the names, faces, locations you see in this are real. And it's really just sort of like a parallel to what happened historically. But a lot of the people who were basically caricatured in this movie have since said things about like how they were portrayed inaccurately, or like things happened differently. And like you can give him artistic liberty. Like he intentionally changed names so he wouldn't have to worry about that criticism, and he still got that criticism. But a lot of it is just the real events are kind of bland. Not a lot happens as far as I can tell. I mean, I guess if you wanted to make like a really slow burn biopic, All the President's Men style, about like Richard Kelly from Florida and how he became a U.S. representative and went down or something, I guess you could do that, but it also sounds boring as shit.
Mm-hmm. I know, that's interesting. I didn't expect... Again, like, anytime I'm watching, based on real events, I always remember the fucking Mitch Hedberg joke of, man, did you hear that story about the gorilla that escaped from the zoo and slapped an old lady? No? Yeah, it was based on this event where I went to the zoo and saw a gorilla and thought about what if that happened.
I love Mitch Hedberg so much.
Oh, I miss him.
That dude is never wrong.
Yeah, it's like, whenever you put based on true events, I'm always like, yeah, probably not. And I mean, I do appreciate that this movie, like, goes so far as, like, some of the events are true. Like, they really lean out there to say that a lot of what you're about to see is very fictionalized. And I appreciate that. I do appreciate that they like take the onus on that and really kind of don't shit you on what you're getting. So that was nice. But
Well, and
yeah.
even some of the stuff that like I think is better in the movie that you mentioned about like the New Jersey mayor that Jeremy Renner plays, a lot of that is also dramatized because in real life, as far as I can tell, the dude was just kind of like cliche scumbag. But this movie kind of goes out of its way to humanize him a bit more. And then there are other things where like the sort of conflict between what the fuck's his name? Bradley Cooper and Louis C.K. in terms of like what the FBI's role in this is. A lot of that is dramatized too, but I feel like that's also just sort of a movie thing. Like there's a cop, and then the cop wants to do a thing that his boss says no, and they argue, and then the cop who wanted to do the thing was right. Like that's just a movie thing. Apparently that did not happen in real life, but you almost want to like give them a benefit of the doubt because even if it did, why would they admit it?
Yeah, the fucking scenes of Bradley Cooper just becoming a goddamn adrenaline junkie in this fucking movie, and he's just so in love with the game. You know, we were talking about that earlier. Like he is just absolutely adoring the game, and he likes being in this world, and so he doesn't ever want to pump the brakes and kind of like take the win like Christian Bale keeps telling him. He keeps going for the next big thing. He keeps upping the stakes and making everything worse and worse and worse. Is really like fun to watch, and shit is like terrifying. It's like, where the fuck are you? Because I'm gonna come over there, I'm gonna punch you in the face. Like, holy shit, this dude is just obsessed and will not let it go. And I really did like that. That was Bradley Cooper might just be the most fun to watch in this movie for me, no lie.
He's a lot of fun when he gets to go insane as it goes on. He wasn't the most compelling for me, but I definitely did just like how unhinged we make him by the end of this. And then the final comeuppance, as it's all sent out, is just like the last note we end his character on is just puking in the street. I think that's just really good. I think that's just always a fun place to leave a character. Is just, oh god, no.
Sorry to interrupt, but I do like the way that, you know, Steve, you mentioned that's just the thing we do with like cops and movies. I'm like, yeah, it is, but you know, I also like that it blows up in his fucking face, and the fact that like Lucy Kay's character of like the more reserved, no, we're not going to go crazy with this, we're not going to keep going up this ladder, was right all along, and he kind of gets to be the one. What? Why don't you go home? That was a pretty good fucking moment, no lie, to see the trope cop that has a chip on his shoulder and doesn't want to do things by the book ends up getting fucked over because he didn't do things by the book. I thought that was kind of fun to see by the end. Alfie, you were still talking. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're all good. My point was very minor. It's just like when good actor get to play man losing every aspect of his sanity. Fun. enjoy scene. Very caveman thoughts on that one. Nothing elaborate there.
Bradley Cooper, I feel like, is an actor that doesn't get enough credit for how good he is in comedies and how good he is as playing this kind of role, because he kind of falls into that category of like Ryan Gosling style, the pretty boy leading man. But like if you go and like look at his filmography, there's certainly like a lot of those like pretty boy rom-com style movies where he's just playing like a womanizer with like sarcastic remarks, but all of his like memorable good performances, he's got so many more layers than that. Not a good movie by any stretch, but even like American Sniper, he's playing a much more dramatic role. In this, he's completely unhinged. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Licorice Pizza, the movie that came out a couple years ago.
That sounds disgusting, and I'm offended.
But the movie that came out a couple years ago by Paul Thomas Anderson, Bradley Cooper is in that movie for a cameo, and it's perhaps the greatest cameo performance any human being has ever given in any movie ever. It's incredible. It's such a good cameo that it was in the trailers, even though he was only in the movie for like 3 minutes. It's absolutely laugh out loud incredible. It's one of those things where like if you never watch any scene from Licorice Pizza, watch the scene where Bradley Cooper shows up because it will change your goddamn life. So he's so good in that movie. And then there's like other like big dramatic things he's done, like A Star Is Born and shit. Like he's a very good actor, and he's got great comedic timing, and he's got a lot of range and versatility. And I love when we can just like throw him in situations where he's just swinging for the fences, throwing in like an absolutely unhinged performance, because he's really, really good at those. And kind of just limiting him to sarcastic remark guy, I kind of feels like does a disservice to how good of an actor he actually is.
I like Cooper quite a bit. It's funny, I always get him confused with Matthew McConaughey because I think they've both had like the exact same career trajectory. Where, like, they started out and they're either in comedies or rom-coms, and then they're like, no, I don't want to just do that. I don't want to be just known for that. And then they go off and they actually do really good dramatic work, but they're still kind of only really known for comedies and rom-coms. I don't know. It's just, I get those two mixed up a lot. White people all look the same.
Tall, lanky white people with slick back hair, they all do.
Yeah, pretty much. The Mexican chic in this cracked me up. I legitimately thought that was one of the funniest fucking ideas ever, because it's just, if nothing else in this movie was based on real events, I 100% believe the FBI saying, we'll just use a Mexican guy to play a sheik.
No, it's much worse. It's much worse.
Oh, yeah? Really?
In real life, they use an Irish guy.
Oh, thank God.
Jesus Christ.
I saw that and I'm like, there is no fucking way they got an Irish man who spoke no Arabic to play a sheik. There's no way, but it's true.
I love when the fucking movie goes with like the most ridiculous thing of, oh, well, they got a Mexican guy to do it. And that's like the more like believable thing than what actually happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like to a certain point, people like can criticize this movie for being historically inaccurate, but you know what? The historical version of it is way more boring.
No. I think the fact that it was actually an Irish guy would have been like. Can you imagine just the amount of stress Christian Bale's character would have had to display? This fucking like redheaded, freckled ass motherfucker. Top of the morning. Just walked up the jet.
They got Lucky Charms in Iran.
Yeah, you know. One scene I did really like, since we're talking about the Sheik, is I really did like the De Niro scene. That was pretty fucking good when he just randomly pulls out the Arabic. I was like, oh shit, that's a good like shoe drop, tense as fuck kind of moment scene. No lie, I liked that one a lot.
And I think that De Niro, he's not even credited in this film, and I think that bit of like specifically casting for one scene with a really big act like that was very rarely do you get to flex like that, but this I think did a fantastic job of that, where like if you want stereotypical the ultimate who do you not want to be in a fucking room with right now in this situation, it's Robert fucking De Niro. You do not want to see. So like I think that's fantastic. I think that's like fantastic. Like you have just for watching movies, you already go in with an assumption about this character that you don't need to spend time establishing the threat of building him up. You build him up very quickly, and you just like, yeah, and he's played by Robert De Niro. You get it. This is why this is tense as fuck. Like, I think that's very well done. I'm just giving him a single scene in this film. I thought was, I'm sure that's all they could get him for, but I think that made it even better. It made it stand out as specifically for serving the story, and like Ian said, it's a really tense as fuck scene. So I enjoyed that a lot. I thought that was a really, really smart choice of getting, because there's the big names throughout this film, but like Robert De Niro is like Robert fucking De Niro. So like that's a really good bit of casting in that. I thought that was fantastic. And the scene wouldn't have worked without that specifically. I don't know. You have to be in fucking Al Pacino or something to make that work.
Okay, now here's a question, because I'm not sure if I'm just like tripping or what. But like, so when they introduced De Niro, they have a cut where it's like him in the past, and he looks like a little bit younger and has like hair, a different haircut and stuff. I'm like, did they did they have him film a separate scene, or is that pulled from another movie and I'm just losing my fucking mind trying to figure out what goddamn movie? That shit like bothered me so, because it's like it's a blink and you miss it shot, right? Where it's just he's the guy that says you'd rather leave a body in the street than bury it because it sends a stronger message, and then they show him kill a guy, and I'm like, that looks like that's just from another fucking movie, and they just used it. I swear to God, I think it is. Like maybe it was a fucking like unfinished Robert De Niro movie where this like just scene of him killing this fucking guy has just been floating around for a fucking decade or whatever.
That's just Robert De Niro's home movies, man.
Yeah, that's just Robert De Niro. Whenever he goes back home to New York, that's just Robert De Niro.
You think Meet the Parents is a movie? That is a documentary.
That shit just fucking like got me. Like I don't know. I had to do a double take on that one. I'd be very curious if anyone has any behind the scenes information about that, because Alfie talked about it like, oh, if you'd only get him for one scene. I'm like, yeah, that is interesting. They only have him for one scene, unless you count the flashback. I don't know. It was weird. I wasn't sure what to make of that one. But like legit, if someone told me no, that is actually from another movie, or that was shot for something that was never produced or something like that, I'd 100% fucking believe you. So there's that.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, and that's a really good point. Yeah, that was at the time, but I just kind of like moved past that, and then yeah, you're right. I would actually be curious to know that.
Yeah. I don't know. This is just an interesting film to watch. I feel like the one character we haven't talked very much about, so I probably want to do that for a little bit before we wrap up here, is just Amy Adams' character and performance in this. So like I started the review and I joked about the side boob, which I mean they do a very good job of presenting her as just, my God, I'll sell my soul for this woman kind of thing. But she gets to do a little bit more than that, but it's a little bit like withdrawn and pulled back, and I don't know, I thought it was interesting that she gets to do an English accent for like a good probably 75% of this film, and she does it in a way where it's very clearly not the kind of accent an actor would do when trying to play British, but believable for a person to do pretending to be British, if that distinction makes sense.
I'm gonna need to call in my British expert here to explain how authentic the British accent was.
I thought it was good. I mean, it's clearly an American doing a British accent, but I think she carries it really well. And I think the fact that she can keep it during the emotional scenes and then switch it off at a dime, and she carries it on for so many scenes. There's like a point in there, like 3/4 through the movie, where you kind of forget that she's not playing a British person, which I think is a good choice. Like I think she just has it like for so fucking long, for like a good stretch there. But no, I thought she did a good job. But I really like how they let her. She's not just smart and competent, but she's also like, she can get jealous. She can get bitchy. She can be wild and just want to have this like passion connection, and we go for this whole gambit of emotions with her where we let her be messy and complicated and fucked up, and not in a way where you're rooting against her or you're rooting for her in a lot of way that we depict women when we write them in media, where we don't let them have that gambit of emotions, where you let them be kind of messed up and fucked up, but still remaining like interesting people and compelling characters. But I think she did a really good job with this. I think everything about her arc is probably the tightest thing in the script, just on a like character starts in A, ends up at C like area. Like I think she had a very clear progression where all of her choices made a lot of sense, and every time she did have to make a really choice, you felt it was a different kind of sympathy than you felt for Christian Bale's character, where his character is just like, oh fuck, oh god, this poor guy, he's gonna fucking have a heart attack in the middle of the fucking street, Jesus Christ, how bad could this get? Her character was much more of just like a, fuck, man, like, fuck. It's just a shitty situation to be. But being able to balance that too and have that overlap, I think, made for a really strong course. I know you didn't like the chemistry between them, Steve, but for just her arc as a character, I did really enjoy it. I think it was refreshing to have, and paired with Jennifer Lawrence's depiction, which I think could get very. That's a hard character to do because she's meant to be a fucking idiot, but never once are you like. It's not punishing for her for that. If anything, she gains more advantages for it by the end. And I think that's an interesting take where like she's completely pivotal to the events of the story. She does have agency, but her agency is choosing not to have agency and wanting to have other things sorted for her. But like again, it felt very real. It felt very close to people I've met or that kind of vibe. Of a real person, of a real woman, while also being fucking hilarious. So her and Amy Adams, and when they have that scene in the bathroom stall where they just try and destroy each other verbally, and then it ends with like the kiss and just leaving off on that. I thought that was very well done. I thought that was a very interesting dynamic where it's not good side, bad side. It's just these are two very complicated people that have had very fucked up lives. And they're just trying to be happy and fucking live, and everything's gone so wrong, and none of them planned it the way they are. So we just have to kind of laugh about it. And the other person just left in disbelief. And I think Amy Adams and Jennifer Lawrence played that really well. So it sucks to hear about how fucking atrocious it must have been on set for them. But the performances they gave were really, really good. That doesn't make up for anything, but like I think they very talented actresses, and are very impressed with both of them.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the performances in here. I tend to agree with Steve that I think I've seen them all give better performances in different things, but I don't think that any one of their performances kind of sells like, oh, watch the movie just for Bradley Cooper's so fucking good. But I did like everyone. Everyone's kind of doing their job here. It does feel like we're just watching a maybe a little less than talented director kind of directing people that are all more talented than him, but he doesn't really know how to bring all of that out. So they're all doing the best that they can, but without like that unifying vision, it kind of gets a little messy. I don't know. Interesting fucking movie overall. Don't regret watching it, but yeah, I'm kind of in the camp where I don't think I'll go back to this.
All right. Anyone else have any other thoughts we want to go over for American Hustle?
What was up with the nail polish? What's the metaphor with the nail polish?
I forgot about that.
It's a metaphor for capitalism.
Okay. Okay. Well, good enough. If that's all the answer I'm getting, I'll take it. Yeah. I don't know. Good movie. Enjoyed. So, I'll give this movie 3 out of 5 science ovens.
I'll give it 2 out of 5 Amy Adams side boobs.
So is that one full boob, or?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, given the size of them, they really could just be their own.
I'll give this 4 out of 5 Jennifer Lawrence stylists, because she looked really good at this movie. Good for them.
She was
The
like
fucking big ass hair and everything.
Yeah, I respect that.
she was like thicker in this movie than I think I've ever seen her. When I first saw her, I'm like, who the fuck is that? Because I'm used to seeing Jennifer Lawrence, and she's usually like very like thin as a rail almost. So she was just thicker in this movie than I'm used to.
Can
seeing
you
Jennifer
believe she
Lawrence.
was like 22 or 23 in this movie?
That's crazy.
Yeah, because it came out 10 years ago. Like, she was a kid in this movie.
I don't know. Weird. Okay. In other news, Steve, it would be your pick if you've got one. If not, I've got something I'd maybe want to do, but I don't know. Mine's kind of on the verge of I don't even know if we can. So.
What do you mean? What exactly do you have in mind?
Well, this weekend, Alfie was talking about fucking Venom a lot, and so it made me think, man, I remember my first comic book had Venom in it, and I couldn't fucking remember the name of the book. And Alfie was trying to help me, like, figure out what the fuck it was from, like, my vague memories of it. But then I just went over to my mom's house, and it was still in the basement, so I now have my very first, like, single-issue proper comic book. And I thought it could maybe be a fun thing for each of us to talk about, or for us to each read our very first comic book, like collectively, read each other's as well, and then do an episode that's a review of each of those books.
Oh, that'd be cute.
Yeah? I don't know if, like, each of you know the answer to that question, though. What was your very first, like, single-issue comic book?
I haven't. I know a bunch of them that I had. I don't know which one would, because I had them all together, so there was like no first one. But if we're just going off of like single issue, it is. Let me pull it up real fast. Let's see. Yeah, it's Superboy Annual 1994.
Okay, all right. I love just how, like, specific it is too, right? So, Alfie, do you know what your very first single-issue comic book was?
Not off the top of my head, because there's a lot of. I know specifically the first single issue I bought, but the one I read, because I told you, like, in England we have them as like those collections where it's like a bigger, thicker thing. So I don't know which one of those specifically it was, but I know it was a Spider-Man one. So I'll have to think back and try and work which one of that out it was.
But
I think it's like a 2000s. Oh no, you know what it is? It's the Spider-Man comic where he got kissed by like this insect queen woman who's like a Captain America villain, and he turns into a giant spider. From like the 2000s.
I think I'm in love with it already. I'm so excited. Yeah, no, let's do this. I'm sorry that I'm taking over topics like left and right from Steve here, but fuck it, it's just happening. So yeah, we're gonna talk about our very first comic book. We're gonna each read our very first comic book, read each other's as well, and we're gonna just do a review of like some fucking obscure ass comic book issue.
Dude, you guys are not ready, because my first comic that I physically remember reading in single issue is part 2 of a 2-part story.
Yes!
And I never had part 1.
No,
I still don't know what happens in part 1.
That's even better. I'm so fucking hyped. Let's go. All right. So everyone's gonna have to figure out what like the specific issue number and title is and stuff, and leave that in the group chat. And I don't even know what the fuck the thumbnail or the title of next week's episode is gonna be, but it should be a fun fucking time. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the champion of the oppressed.
And I am regretting my life choices.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things. I gotta tell you guys this story, and I feel like I'm gonna give you a fair warning. It's probably gonna result in an uproar of laughter, and I'm gonna start the episode right after that. But I gotta fucking tell you guys this story.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I have become Wile E. Coyote, and I'm not happy about it. So we got like a fucking chipmunk problem in our neighborhood, and the little bastards are like digging under people's houses and fucking up foundation. I'm worried about it happening to my house and stuff. So anytime I see one, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna throw something at her, just do something to try to fucking kill the thing. So I come home tonight and I gotta do a little housework project, do a little painting, and I'm going back and forth between the garage and stuff, and I see one come in the garage, and it sees me, and so it quickly runs into like this like wood rack thing I've got in my garage to like put planks of wood. And I'm like, okay, so I shut the garage door up, keeping eyes on where it ran in, make sure it doesn't get a chance to run out without me at least swinging a hammer at it. And I'm like, okay, what's the plan here? And I start pulling out like stuff that I've got stored there to see if I can, see it. And it's pretty far back, so I'm like, I've not got anything that's gonna be able to fucking kill it from here. So I grab a smoke bomb. And I light the smoke bomb, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to put it in this spot that it's hiding, because either a lot of the smoke's going to get trapped there and it'll suffocate, or it's going to run out and I can fucking thwack it, right? So the smoke bomb goes off, and it's like collecting in the closed garage. I'm like, okay, this is getting a little bit too much for me, so I'm just going to make sure I keep eyes on it so it doesn't have a chance to run away. I'm going to open the garage door to let the smoke clear out. And I open the garage door, and I see from around the side of the house a fucking chipmunk run right in front of the garage. And I'm like, how the fuck did it get out? Did it chew a hole through the wall? And while I'm sitting there looking, trying to figure out what the fuck happened, the goddamn chipmunk that I had trapped ran out of the fucking woodpile. They fucking conspired against me, guys. They fucking planned it, and they played me like a goddamn fiddle. It's such bullshit.
Oh my god.
On that note, hi everyone.